audio. So, um, but it seems already like it's doing so much better. Still good on your end.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay. Okay. Sweet. Let's just like have faith and we'll just pretend. Actually, shoot, I'm gonna grab a pen. Nope, I got a pen. Got a pen here. We'll grab a
So
random
start
piece
over.
of, and we'll start over here. Dude, it's just a warm up prep, right?
There we go.
Yeah. Move this back. You should see my setup right now, bro. I'm all right. I'm gonna explain my setup on this when we start recording. Oh, 26 minutes. Okay, I might actually still have some of your highlights there. This thing is recording on my computer. All right. Well, Chris, round number three of
There we
this
go.
podcast attempts. Hopefully this one goes through. We have our Wi-Fi gods trying to take us down. I have we both you moved the locations as well in your house?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so for the listeners right now, we changed our whole podcast studio, both of us, for you guys. So never say we didn't do anything for you. I got my camera. I can't really show you where my camera is right now because my camera's recording it, but it's sitting on a candle right now as my tripod because we're not in our basement where my whole setup is. So we are whining and dining. We are winging it right now, but it should be good. But Chris, welcome to the podcast for the third
Thank you.
time. I'm excited to have you here.
Me as well. Thanks
Yeah.
for having
So, we were talking. We already had this conversation a little bit, but we should bring the people back in that missed the first 10 minutes of our conversation. We've kind of known each other for like 3 years. Um, and I've just been a huge fan of the stuff that you do. And it's really cool to see it done at the high school level. And I think it's cool to see it done at the high school level because what we already talked about was not a lot of high school athletes like to train. Like athletes in general don't usually love training in the sense like just they don't then it's not their number one thing, especially the good athletes. But high school athletes specifically, like it's tough to get a lot of high school athletes to train and be focused and like get after it, especially if they just don't have that like typical meathead like kind of background. And it's really cool to watch your athletes like and students, I guess I should say, students, athletes, however you want to talk about them. But it's really cool, like when you watch them, like they're full intent when they're doing these things. Like they're smile on their face, but they're also full intent and actually trying the challenges that you see. And this is one thing I wanted to talk to you about before our podcast crash. But it's like I've gone to multiple high schools, like probably 10 in the last year and just watching like most high school stuff. And I'm sure we all have like some athletes that just don't engage and don't whatever it is. But for the majority of classes and gym classes I've seen or high school strength conditioning, there's probably 50% of the group that is just not doing anything. Like like I've seen where they're playing like wiffle ball games, and this is literally just me like walking past fields where gym classes are going on, weird stuff like that. 50% of the class isn't even like playing. Half of them are like on their phones during the class. Like, but I'm watching your video sessions and like everybody's engaged, everybody's like fully in what you're doing. And I think that's one of the best metrics of a good program. Like the kids want to be there, it looks like. And I'm interested in how you built that out. Like, how have you built out that environment to where the kids actually want to be where you are at, especially when they kind of have to be where you're at, right? Like it's high school. They can't really skip high school class. So like how have you built that out? How have you built out that culture there?
So they can skip whenever they want. That's I tell them that day one. You don't have if this is not for you, I'm not trying to convince you that this is good or this is fun or you'll get something out of it. I gave up on that years ago. So I tell them, if you don't want to be here, no problem. It doesn't hurt my feelings and it'll make it easier for everybody. Now with the kids that are there that want to stay and appreciate, what's going on in there. I found initially trying to get buy-in was hard. So initially we spoke about sort of how the programs have morphed over the years. And initially, like I said, when we were doing just typical weight room stuff that you would see from, years and years and years ago, it was hard to get buy-in. The kids were not interested in doing that stuff in front of each other for fear of, just that social anxiety or just, not enough ability. Whatever. High school is a different setting. They're my students. They're not paying to be in that class. They're not my clients. So that makes that even more difficult. So going back to what I said earlier about, if they don't want to be there, it's not really a big deal to me. Like I said, in the end, it's I'm not trying to convince them to stay and what have you. So the fact that they have to be in there changes things a lot. It makes your job as a coach I think a little more difficult because, as I said, they're not paying you. And if you're dealing with a client who isn't necessarily your favorite client, and it's really you're pulling teeth to get them to do stuff, it's pretty easy to just hand them their money back and say, you know what, this
Yep.
is
See ya.
right.
Yep.
Uh, there, I'm stuck with you for 5 months, and whether you like me or not. So, and vice versa. So it's imperative that the kids have a good time. So that's my main focus. So a lot of how that program has morphed, if we've gone away from typical lines and doing, band booty band stuff and those kind of walks and that type of thing. Nothing in lineups anymore. Everything now is a game when they come in. So there is some type of something for them to do. It could be balance stuff, it could be tennis ball stuff, it could be hurdle stuff, crawling, whatever it might be. But that's just initially when the kids come in. So the first little part, it's hey, here we are, and here's what we're doing today. And then kids just keep filing in, and they see what the other kids are doing. And I kind of set up maybe 2, 3 stations, and they just explore. So that's just on their own. They just, I show them and demo a few things for them, and then they just go. And then they try to do, because I can do it, I kind of show off to them a little bit, and it gives them, a little bit of something to reach for, right? They're like, okay, this old man can do it.
He
Let
can
me
do
see
it.
if I can do it, right? So, and then they go on there and they fail miserably, and I laugh, and then they keep trying, and then that kind of builds a little bit of a bit of trust between me and those kids. So we're joking around and we're having a good time, and they try. And so I'll chirp them, they'll chirp me right back, and like I said, we just go from there. So in large part, a lot of the buy-in comes from the beginning, the first 15, 20 minutes of the class. That's where the most playful things happen. A lot of the things you see on my Instagram page, the tennis ball stuff, the stick work, all that stuff falls in the beginning, and that's to create the that maximum engagement. I want those kids to be, like I said, interested in what we're going to do today. So I found doing just basic warm-ups, again, that traditional sense of lineups, and okay, we're going to do our lunges and this and that, et cetera, et cetera. It just wasn't getting the kids riled up to be in there. And for me, I like energy in a space, and I want it to be, loud and kids having fun and joking around and all that stuff, and competing and what have you. And in order to get that, I found that this way works best with my demographic.
One of the things that I love that you mentioned was that social hierarchy piece, because it is never more obvious than in the high school setting than how important that social hierarchy is for the athletes, right? Because in the college setting, it's important in the college setting, in the private setting, but it's like kind of in the private setting and the college setting, what I've noticed is they have different social hierarchies they're a part of, right? So like if they fail in front of that group, it's not their only group, right? It's just their kind of athlete group. Where in the high school setting, it's like you're with those kids all day long. You goof around, like you mess up and you trip or something like that. I know a lot of those kids. And I had these conversations with high school kids. It's like they feel if they trip or mess up in a drill, they'll get made fun of at lunch hour and after and for like the rest of the week. And trying to break kids out of the fear of the social hierarchy, which I feel like that's honestly one of my favorite reasons for working with a high school group, is like getting them almost over themselves, but also understanding like, bro, when I was in high school, I was the same exact way. It's like it feels like everything matters, and you don't have a lot of like really worth built up as a high schooler because you're new to this planet Earth and you're figuring everything out all at once, and then you're like, shit, I gotta fit in, I gotta do this. What is kind of your approach to getting kids to like be all right with failing with that whole social hierarchy pressure that they face in that high school setting? Like how do you make failure okay? How do you make goofing around okay? How do you make sure like they're kind of laughing at themselves and with other people, like as a group, and kind of make that failure piece okay, make that goofiness okay, so they are able to break out of the current athlete that they are? Because I really believe the failure is a huge key to unlocking the next step of who they are as an athlete, who they are as a person. But you really have to get over that first step of which is the fear of failure, which is the I would rather be super comfortable at being a 6 or 7 in my social hierarchy than fall to a 1 and eventually climb higher. But like that fall, that goof around where somebody's laughing at you, like that fall is really hard for a high schooler. So how do you approach that with them?
Okay, so initially, when I started doing some of these different things, weird things, whatever you want to call it, with the kids, there was resistance. I know we spoke about this a couple years ago, just with respect to crawling. I'm like, man, I can't get these kids to buy in. I don't understand. And I'm doing it with them and whatever. I'm trying to show them all these different ideas and what have you. And it was just they would look at me and they would watch someone do it and just like, I'm not doing that. So I was like, okay, what else can I do here? So I kept those ideas in the program. Now, lucky for me, I get a fresh new group of kids every 5 months. Well, every 5 months. It's a long time to have them, but if you have a good group, obviously it's great. When you have a bad one, it's a long 5 months. Um, so I kept those things in the program. Just as like I got to give it time. I don't want to just take it out as too soon. I mean the sample size I was working with because it was COVID was usually half of what I generally work with. So I'm like, hey, the numbers are small. They're just, I don't know. Well, who knows what's going on here? So I just kept it in. So I just stayed the course with things like crawls, cartwheels, and rolls and what have you. So I maintained that stance and just kept it a part of the program. Just kept doing it, kept doing it, kept doing it. Once the kids started realizing that, okay, if I'm going into Diggs' class, I'm doing crawls, I'm doing cartwheels, I'm doing back bends, I'm gonna fall over. I can't do a back bend. I'm gonna try and I'm gonna fall and I'm gonna fail, and people might laugh. And what happens is there really is no, kids are failing left and right in there, and that's sort of how I sell it to them as well. I'm like, if you can do this, I go, what are we getting out of this? I go, if you can do this skill right away on the first attempt, that's not helping you. It's too
Mm.
easy. So, I even learned that when I'm coaching my kids' soccer team. So I'll give them a drill, and if the kids nail it right away, I'm like, this drill sucks. Moving on, right? Because I'm like, this is, it's not a Bobby White good drill. It's a nonsense drill. So I'm like, okay, I got to give them something where there's struggle, where there's, I see errors. So there's something to learn from those mistakes. So I sell it to the high schoolers the same way. The atmosphere in there is, my attitude is very laissez-faire. I like to joke around, have fun. So again, like it's not very serious in my weight room. So the environment is conducive to some of the meatheads that are in the other classes. They're going to English or math or science or accounting, whatever, and then they're coming. They have to sit for 75 minutes in there, and then here they can just be clowns a little bit, and all within reason, of course, right? I'm not running a gong show in there, but there's a lot of laughs, there's a lot of rah rah rah, supporting each other, things like that. So and failure too. Kids are trying things, and they may not be able to do it, but there's always that maybe a chirp, but there's support right behind it. And so they kind of again, it's all within. They're not being jerks to each other. Nothing is malicious with respect to, oh, that guy or girl can't do that, and they're this or they're that, and they leave the class and they're getting chirped or whatever. There's been times I've posted kids wiping out. I have one reel that's all wipeouts from kids falling over in my class, and I always ask them beforehand. I say, hey, is it okay if I share this? And they always laugh and they say, yeah, it's fine, because I know what can happen when it gets out there, right? And someone might just get, abused about their ability, whatever, whatever. So I'm always conscious of that piece. A kid in a compromising position or falling, doing a drill incorrectly or whatever. My take is always an area of humor. And then I kind of go in and soften that with, let's keep trying and see if we can actually do it, and give them some encouragement, and hopefully they can get it. So what that's done is it kind of allows kids to just do whatever in there. So they watch each other, watch the first few go, and then all of a sudden the next kid is going, the next kid's going, next kid's going. Where I find it is not that easy is with the grade nines, like the freshman kids coming in. With the older kids, the 11s, grade 11 is probably my favorite group. But those kids they're not in grade nine anymore, where they're new to the school and they're worried about all those social things and what have you, right? And looking stupid, or someone might record it and whatever. But initially they get over it pretty quick. I got to say, like the grade nines have, they buy in pretty quickly and start doing the nonsense I'm doing. And again, there's all kinds of failure. They're chirping each other, and but it's good. It's like it's more of a motivating sense. It's not putting someone down and calling them out and saying that they don't belong in the class or whatever, and et cetera, et cetera. So that piece there, I find it is there is a difficult balance, right? Again, because you don't want to push too far, and there's certain kids that can handle certain things, and some kids can't. And so you also have to be mindful of that as well. And in large part, most of the kids recognize that too. I'm at a school with about 1,100 kids, and the community, by and large, it's a good school. The kids are, like I said, for the most part, pretty respectful. There's always going to be some shitheads no matter where you go. So, that's just by numbers alone. And, but they recognize, they're not going to bully some kid just because they can't do something. And if and when I hear that, and it's not to say it's never happened, I jump in immediately and pinpoint something that maybe that kid can't do or whatever. And again, try to say, hey, like, remember, not everyone can do everything, and if they can, who cares, right? At the end of the day. So, we're all here to try to just be better athletes and not shit all over each other when we can't do something.
Well, and one of my favorite points that you mentioned there was like progressing it to where basically everybody at some point is failing, and if you're not, like that movement session, that movement practice probably didn't do you a ton of good. It was just emphasizing that, like, I relate it to like a math class. It's like, okay, we get you can do 2 plus 2, right? Like there's no longer a point of continuing to do 2 plus 2 to prove you can do 2 plus 2. Like, let's get to some multiplication or some algebra or something there to continue to progress. And when you do up the ante there, you're going to fail. The smartest student is going to fail. And that's really the balance point. And what I look at and look for in a good coach is like, how can you find that balance point when you have a class of students where 2 plus 2 is a challenging math problem, and then you also have a kid where they're doing like advanced physics, and now you need to like get them to a point where that is a challenging movement problem. But continuing to progress and regress the program and the movement session within the movement session is kind of the art to me of coaching. Like there's a very it needs to become very nuanced within this very playful manner of progressions and regressions with what you're doing that day. So how do you view that? Because I'm sure you have classes where there are the 2 plus 2 kids where it's like a front roll, like just a regular roll is a challenging movement problem. And then you have kids that can do back flips and front flips. Like, how are you personally like working on that? Maybe an example or something like that where you have a session like that. Like, how do you add the movement problem and keep the movement session alive for the individual athlete?
Okay, so the one in particular I can think of is a grade 9 group. I had a general phys ed class. This is my first time teaching a general PE class, grade 9. So I mentioned our school is unique in the sense that we have this sports program, and I won't go off on a tangent talking about that, but we have this sports program. So we have a lot of high-level athletes, hockey, soccer, baseball, basketball, and I mentioned like we have skiers, volleyball players, tennis players, golfers, um, gymnasts. There's again just a ridiculous amount of high-level teenage athletes at that school. Just speaking on soccer alone, there's maybe a handful of kids that are going D1 from our team this year. There's some kids who've gone to the NHL. There's kids that are going. There's kids in the draft this year that have been through our school for the NHL draft. It's ridiculous the quality of athlete that is coming through. Now, when you have, so that's not to say our entire school is that demographic. We have, non-elite level athletes as well. There's, everything from house league to, the highest level, and people that don't play any sports. So our school is littered with everybody. It's not just sports kids. There's all kinds of kids there. So anyway, I have this general phys ed class, grade 9 kids. Now, usually what you get in a general phys ed class is everyone who is not an athlete. So generally, so because the baseball kids take the baseball course, the soccer kids take the soccer course, et cetera, et cetera. So they're already locked into those phys ed courses, so they don't take a general PE. So you get everybody else. So this year was my first year teaching that, and it was awesome because the kids were very low level with respect to physical qualities. I mean, like I've never seen that in a long time, and it was interesting. So I wanted that challenge, and I saw another gentleman work with those kids last year, and I loved what he did, and he spoke very highly of working with those kids, and just more satisfying and what have you. And anyway, so we were doing front rolls. So, and this video was on my Instagram, and it's funny, like you watch some of the kids go through it, and there's out of the 10 kids that go, two of them do it amazing. That one boy was a high level skier. Another boy, he's like, I think number, I don't know, top five in Canada or something like that for his age for skiing. And another boy is an MMA fighter, but he trains a lot and so on. Now, everyone else, um, you know, various backgrounds, various exposures to different physical qualities growing up. Some had none, some had, a little bit, and everything else in between. So, how do I make it attainable for everybody? Now, we're doing a roll. So, initially, my first, I show them how to do it. How do I get them to all be successful? Okay, so I notice, all right, a couple kids can't do it. So, what do I do to make it easier for them? All right, so now we're not going to run and do a roll. We're going to stand at the mat, kneel down, and do it from a kneeling position, right? So it just allows them an entry point. And they might do it kind of a weird way and just kind of flop over and whatever. And the next time they do it, they're watching other kids go. Before you know it, by the end of that drill, those kids have kind of figured it out. The other kids, how I challenge them is now maybe, okay, you're doing a running start. You're going to have a barrier in front of you to jump over and then do a roll. So at least there I can add layers and, like I said, address all the needs of the kids that are in front of me.
And the progression regression thing is kind of cool too, because it's like, for me as a coach, that's what keeps me on my toes and alive, right? Like in the session itself, it's like, man, how can I either it was too far or
Yep.
too little, and now it's like, okay, now I get the fun of like, okay, what else can I add? And that's one of the things that the coaches ask a lot is like, how do you add some of that creativity? I'm sure you get that question a lot too, because I look at your page like, bro, some of that stuff is super creative. Like, how do you get creative? How do you come up with some of this stuff? A lot of it's just like living and breathing in the session in and of itself. It's like, man, they're doing this, and now I have these like boxes over here. What could we do if we add this box into this kind of setting, and where can we take this? How does that creativity aspect work? But what's kind of your creativity process? Is it very similar to where it is that moving alive like process, or how do you come up with some of the things that you're kind of working on with your athletes?
So this year I found a lot of the kids we'll do I'll run through a couple drills and different layers of difficulty. And a kid will say something. He'll say, Coach, why don't we try this? All right, let's try that. And then someone else will come in another day. Hey, why don't we try it this way? Great, let's try that. So I get some ideas from the kids. I'm this year, that's the most ideas I've got from my students this year. I mean, I'm just watching what they're doing, and we'll get to a point in a drill, and some of the kids that can nail that drill get bored a little quicker, right? If they all of a sudden can master that drill, so then I see them do something else. So I'll see what they're doing, and they'll try something unique that I haven't suggested to them. They just kind of figured it out on their own. And then I'll steal that idea, and then I'll say, hey, Austin just tried this. Why don't we see how many of you guys can do this? And then they'll try it and continue on from there. So some of the ideas come from the kids, and they just kind of happen organically in the space at the time. As you mentioned already, looking around and saying, okay, what can I use in front of me to make this more challenging for somebody in front, for one of the athletes? And using boxes, whatever it might be, just something on the spot. That just comes from, I think, experience. I mean, experience in that space. You try so many other things, and you try to address the 25, 30 kids in front of you, and they're all at different levels. And, 5 of them might be able to do this, but 5 of them can't do this. 5 of them are over here, and what have you. And so you got to kind of figure it out. So you're, like I said, thrown in there, and you're just like, okay, how can I address all these kids? because I don't want these 10 to just be sitting here watching these kids do all this good stuff over here. So again, that piece just kind of happens organically in the weight room. In terms of the creativity piece, I'm stealing from anyone and everyone online that I can. I see unique ideas from baseball, like I've been following these European handball accounts and watching some of the stuff. I'm like, wow, that's great for an I call them arrival games to the kids. So I say this is our arrival game, and we're going to do this. So I'm taking some of the ideas from there and just kind of modifying it for my demographic, and just again just trying to see what other people are doing. And I mean, Instagram has been a huge help for that. Again, because before, I was during COVID, I was taking out phys ed textbooks, and I was reading phys ed textbooks, and yeah, there were some gems in there for sure, right? Like a lot of the physical stuff I do, where the kids are doing hand fights, or some wrestling type things, or rugby type ideas and football ideas. Um, a lot of those ideas came from phys ed textbooks, like 1980s, 1970s, or old books, and I'm looking through. I'm like, there's some good stuff in here, and so I'm stealing from there as well, and again, just trying to modify for the group in front of me. So I'm trying to pull from so many different areas. So it's, having this course called a weight training course is really does it no justice, because the weight training piece is just a small piece of that puzzle. I'm trying to steal from everybody, every realm. I see a good idea, online or whatever, see somebody do something, and I'm like, yeah, let's try that with our group, and how can I modify it for my space, number of kids I have, and the equipment I have in front of me, and again, just try to make it as fun as I can for them. I look at some of those games and I try it myself, and I'm like, okay, this is stupid, or this is too easy. Then I don't even bother. So I'll try it, with myself, and there's a couple guys I work out with at school. We'll try a few things, and like, yeah, this is fun, this is cool, this is difficult, blah blah blah, and I'll try it with the kids, and then and go from there.
Bro,
But
the old phys ed textbooks are gold, man. Like anytime I see one at like a thrift store, I'm picking it up. I got like this book from like, I don't know how old it is, like 1970. It's an old book I got for $2 at a random thrift store. I'm telling you, I looked through all of it and I'm like, how did we butcher strength and conditioning from like, I read all of this. I'm like, this is amazing
right,
physical education for these kids. And we don't do any of this stuff anymore. Like, how did we go backwards?
it's unbelievable. The that piece, like I listen to my kids every day. Well, I would always ask, "What did you do in gym class? What'd you do in gym class?" And having said that, I've actually got a great game from my youngest daughter's phys ed teacher this year. So again, she's in grade 5, so I just modified it for the high school setting, and so that's another piece I'm stealing from too. But generally, the phys ed that I'm hearing about from my own kids and other kids that I'm dealing with is some nonsense. Like it's completely removed from what is in those textbooks, what I experienced, and I don't even know what it is now. I mean, it's just obviously it's completely pushed aside, and more often than not, it's canceled. It's raining, or they got this, or they got that. And it's one time a week, or whatever it is. It's just not really a priority. Um, but yeah, there is so much great knowledge and ideas in those books that you can use and implement today, and they still hold value, and the kids love it. I was working with a group yesterday, and 10 11-year-old hockey players, girls, high level girls. Well, there's no one elite at 10 or 11, but they play a high level of hockey, let's put it that way. So anyway, the initial conversation that I had with the gentleman who had reached out, he appreciates what I do, and I've worked with his daughter before, and he has really bought into what I'm selling. And anyway, he was saying how the hockey coach was thinking a little something more, lifting weights, et cetera, et cetera. But these are 10, 11-year-old girls. So I was like, okay. So I was like, I don't even think I want to run this session. I think this is not going to be a good fit. I can already tell. And I go, I'm just a different, I'm in a different place than what they want. So anyway, I ran the session, and we started with some tennis ball work. We did some tag games. We did some bear crawl, some jumps, some races, and some physical stuff where they were pushing each other and so on. So anyway, the feedback that I was getting from some of the parents was, um, somersaults and cartwheels are like, oh, I don't understand how that relates to hockey, and what was the other? Oh, and they think they should be lifting. They assume heavy weights and being out of breath is the way. And I was just like, oh boy, like it's we're so far removed in terms of what you think your child needs and what I think is a better option for your kid physically. And these are all more PE based things that I'm trying to implement with the kids because they're missing those pieces at school. And yeah, it's interesting to hear some of the feedback about what you're doing and what is expected kind of thing, right? Again, there's still so many parents who think you can superimpose an adult program onto a kid and run through that, right? But meanwhile, they're missing all these little pieces from PE class that is now gone. So they're missing all these pieces. They're focused on maybe one sport, so they miss out on all these developmental pieces that along the way. And anyway, so it's interesting to see where PE has gone, and when you try to do something like that, what the commentary is.
Well, and one of the things I think this kind of can get us to a good segue to one of the points we talked about right before our podcast crashed the first time was the balance between stimulus and fun and like movement efficiency and like these output numbers and what you're really looking for and valuing in some of these sessions and getting out of. And like I feel like in our strength conditioning sector, we we realized, okay, we need to prove that we're trying to appease the parents or whoever's paying us, right? Easiest way to do that is show a number, right? Show a number. Okay, you had this, now you have that. You had this sprint number, you have that number. You have this jump number, now you have that jump number. And we went really, really far away from some of the non-tangibles, some of the movement efficiency pieces, some of the how do they feel, how do they move, how do they do some of these pieces. And I think that is why, to me, at least personally, when I look at all of this, like why we have gotten so far away from some of these old PE books and some of this old just gold, where like you watching these beautiful athletes that are moving well, like they're moving super well, they're feeling well, they're you're seeing the field, they're strong on the field. Like I feel like that's a big reason why we have moved away so far. It's more so for us as a coach to prove that we have a purpose, we have a reason for being in these sessions because we can get athletes stronger. And so I'd like to pose that question to you on take three of our podcast, take three of answering this question for you. But what is your balance between that strength stimulus, these tangible numbers, and this movement efficiency piece? Like what's kind of your balance there, and what are you looking for? What are you paying attention to, and how do you value or get data on these intangible things, on this like I feel better, like how are you valuing that, how are you piecing that together in your program?
So as I said before, a lot of it comes with conversation with the athletes themselves. So I'll pull some kids aside and ask them, what's working? Do you feel any different? And so usually I wait about, like I said, I have these kids for 5 months at a time. Some kids will roll back into the same class the second semester, so I might have you for 10 months, which is fantastic. And obviously, these things take some time to recognize that they're working, because it's not as simple as, oh, your squat number's up. There we go. Your sprint time is better. You're jumping further. Those are easy measurables. Feel is different. There's so many variables: sleep, stress, nutrition, playing time, et cetera, who they're playing against. All those factors, weigh in on an athlete's game experience or training environment, what have you. So usually the first thing they say when I ask how things are working is, I feel better out there. I'm moving better. I'm more efficient in my movements. What took, X amount of energy before, obviously, again, that's not something they can measure, but again, they're going by feel, right? So something before where, I had a hard time doing this move or doing this skill. Now I can do it at ease in a game, and I'm more comfortable doing this skill in a game. So between the movement efficiency, the confidence as well that we spoke about, again, just trying some of these things that will challenge them enough to give them confidence in trying other things and even getting more confident on a field and taking someone on one or whatever the case may be. Those pieces there, it's difficult to measure, but it all comes down to a conversation with the athlete. And if they're telling me that they feel better out there, I don't think they're just saying that to, say that. Again, this demographic, they'll tell me straight out, coach, this sucks, and coach, this is great. And so when I'm asking them, like, because I'm genuinely interested into what they're feeling out on and when they're playing their sport. Because if they're feeling nothing, then maybe it requires me to revisit, my programming and what I'm giving them, and maybe I need more of this, less of that, et cetera, et cetera. So with respect to balance, I mentioned too, all these kids have their training outside of the school. And again, trying to find not too much that's going to overload them, burn them out with lifts, et cetera, et cetera. So a big part of, the program itself is just having conversations with the athletes. And the fact that I coach the soccer team too, one of the assistants there, so I have full access to all those kids all the time. So I see them at every game, all the training. They're in the weight room. So, I'm getting a lot of feedback from them in particular, and just trying to make that session the best for them. Again, I'm trying to weed out the nonsense that is not moving the needle for them, and try to find things that does work for that individual athlete themselves.
What has been some of the things that you've weeded out that you've tried, maybe you thought were important and maybe they're not, or maybe drills that you like that aren't? And then what have been some things where like they're kind of your pillars now that you like, okay, every time we kind of get better at these things, the athletes tell me they feel better. Especially, and I like that you have a new wave of athletes over and over again, because I feel like you can get a lot of data points pretty quickly with that. So has there been like what have been both sides of those things, where things you've believed in and then you're like, okay, it's probably really just not working that much, and then things that are like starting to become staples in your program 3 years in?
Yeah, so the it's funny, I'm laughing because I've seen a lot of the what's his name? ATG getting ripped on, and knees over toes, and of course, I'm like, okay, let's see what some of this is all about. So I remember reading about that and trying some of those things that Tib raises. I'm like, I don't know, right? So we're trying some of that. So that stuff is all out. Um, yeah, so I did try it, and I was just like, I don't know. The kids were just like, they didn't love it. I didn't love it. It was just kind of, wasn't too exciting for them. So that was gone. Um, yeah, and I've really removed a lot of the lifts. It's like I said, I try to give them one main lift that they can smash that day. So if it's a back squat, overhead press, bench press, deadlift, and then there's a couple accessory things that they do, but in large part, I've taken out a lot of weights. Um, I just feel that with their age, how much volume do they really need? How much intensity they really need. Again, like a lot of these kids are lifting outside of sessions with me, and again, to various degrees of competency and proper programming. Again, I'm not, some of it is good and some of it is okay and some of it is atrocious. And yeah, so that piece for sure, like the weights is far less for sure. There's still days where, the kids might want to do more weights that day. So, we'll go after it, and I'll program more weight training stuff or more weight bearing exercises. But yeah, that's been a huge change for sure, is the removal of weightlifting exercises. Like I said, I still do some like the main compound lifts are still there, but I've, like I said, instead of having, a session with 7 or 8 um, lifts, main lifts, accessories, etc. Now it's 1 to 3, right? And that's it. And the rest of the stuff is gymnastics type things, partner stuff, tennis ball work, etc., etc. Sorry, I went on that tangent. What was the other piece of that? What are the things that have stayed in the program? So the tennis ball work I love. The kids love it, and so what I find with that, so that has definitely been something that the kids enjoy, and I've kept in and just continue to add layers onto it because it's easy to add layers. It's an easy thing to say, okay, well, we're throwing it up with the left hand and whatever, we can catch it all these different ways. There's so many different ways you can throw a ball up and catch it and whatever. And that's just a simple thing that gets the kids engaged and interested. So that piece has stayed for sure, and I keep that in that first little bit of the warm up, and just build from there. But as I said, that's an easy thing to progress, and also something that is simple enough for the kids to just come on in, and I can demo it really quickly, and you get started right away. You mix in partners and things like that, and now they have another athlete to play with there. And again, you have that engagement with the kids, and that just creates a nice vibe in the room, and we get ready to lift from there. So that piece has stayed for sure. So that initial warm up piece over the last 3 years, I've kept in the program because the buy-in has been so good. So for the last 3, 4 semesters, or years, I should say, the groups have been fantastic in the weight room. Whereas before, you mentioned already when you walk by some gym classes, you're seeing, a number of kids just sitting down, sitting on a phone, and they're just not participating. And to me, that drives me crazy. Like if you come into that space, I mean, man, oh man, like you're sitting down all day and in every other class. So in here, you should want to move around and have some fun. But yeah, so that piece has stayed for sure because, like I said, what it creates, how it sets the tone. It sets the tone for the session. And I know if I give them a drill and it sucks, I know the session is, I'm like, okay, I better have some good stuff moving forward because we didn't start off on a good foot. But generally, those tennis ball games, the stick work, things like that, that has all stayed. And I've just tried to build from there and try to add in layers so it's not so there's some novelty there too. I mentioned some kids take my course more than once, and I don't want them to always do the same things. And I always feel like you almost have to one up yourself. So I'll have a group of kids semester 1, and they see all the stuff on Instagram, and then when they get there, I almost feel as though I have to give them something new. Like they've seen the other stuff, so let's try something new with this group and see if they can do it and kind of go from there. So that keeps me sharp in that regard too, just to keep it novel and fun for the kids. So in terms of what have I gotten rid of? Lots of too much lifting and more movement stuff, gymnastic stuff, and the things that have stayed is those arrival games, the tennis ball work and stick work and what have you.
So what does a day, like what's a layout of a day look like then? They have the rival game building up into that lift and then accessories. Like, can you lay out a day for me? Like what it would look like?
So depending on the group, so with the soccer kids that I work with, so that class is both. So we do like strength and conditioning stuff, and then we also do tactical as well, technical and tactical things too. So usually the way those sessions run, I'll have those kids for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and that's all usually on field work. So we're doing, crawls, rolls, some physical stuff, maybe wheelbarrows, partner carries. Then we'll do our jumps, skips, hops, that kind of thing, like just some generic pogos and things like that. And then we'll do, like I said, the jumps and the sprints, and then they kind of move into their technical things and tactical stuff. When we move into the off season, so once we move indoors with the soccer kids, then I get them in the weight room. Those sessions are I pretty much mirror how I run the other classes. Basically, the template is the same. There's an arrival game. You come in, and there's something for you to do and try and explore. And then from there we move into a warm up, and that's when I add in the tennis ball stuff, the stick work, just kind of simple things that they can try with a partner or on their own, and just get them engaged, get their head kind of in the right space and having some fun and smiling. From there, depending on the day, if it's say we're working on lower body, okay, so we're going to do a bunch of, we have like a jump day, and so we're doing all kinds of jumps. So it might be, I noticed, I saw one of your posts, I think it was today, the plate jumps. We do that a lot too, right? So we'll throw the plates down, they'll do like the obstacle course and the plate jumps. The other day we were doing the hurdles. And then it turned into, okay, let's, put it up as high as you can go, and let's see how high we can get. From there, then we'll move into a lift. So that day we were squatting that day. So it was a back squat day. And from there, then we move into some like an accessory lift after that. And then maybe we'll hit calves on the way out. And then usually we finish off with an ISO or some type of challenge as much as we can. Not all the time, but generally that's kind of the layout of the class. There's a rival game, some type of warm up with something a little more playful and fun to get them in the right headspace, and then we move into some jumps or crawls, rolls, and then the main lift, and then a couple accessories, and then we're on the way out.
Boom. All right, listeners, don't say I ever went too woo-woo-y. I just got him to lay out his whole template there. We just got that for free. Easy money. Let's go. One of the things I've had this written down for a little bit because you've brought it up a couple times, but one of the things you've talked about is you talk to your athletes. You ask them questions. You ask them input on the sessions. You ask them input on what are the sessions leading to. Ask them input on like what their sport is like. And I think a lot of coaches struggle with that, especially young coaches. I know a lot of young coaches struggle with it. I struggled with it as a young coach. It's like, you want to be the serious coach. You want to have the coach that has all the answers. You want to have the just be, the serious coach. I don't know a better way to describe it. And when you're that serious coach, I just feel like you lose out on so much data and just day-to-day conversations with your athletes, so much adaptability within the session of, okay, you will just never admit something sucks, or you just don't even, the worst is coaches that don't even know their sessions suck because they don't talk. Like that is the worst. That's when I'm like, oh, you are so disconnected. I'm looking at, and again, I could have recorded 100 of my original sessions as a strength coach and been that coach where I'm like, I don't even know my sessions suck. I think they're amazing, but if you just looked at all the athletes' face, you're like, oh, they hate this. How did you get over yourself to become a in quotations, serious coach? Like how did you get over that ego aspect where you are able to have that conversation with an athlete? You are able to adapt your sessions and admit failure on the fly, or have give a control to where it's like not even a failure. It couldn't even be a bad trouble, but it's like, okay, athlete, like what could be better here? Like how can we increase this? Like how have you gotten to that point to where it's you're okay with giving up some of that control, giving up some of that seriousness, giving up some of the I'm the coach, listen to me, I will give you all that answers.
Experience. It was at the beginning when I was running these weight rooms and working with these kids, I always thought it was them. It was a them problem. They're weak. They don't want to do it. They're, whatever. Any excuse I can make to not look at myself and be like, maybe it's what I'm putting out there. And then finally it was like, that was the question I asked myself. Like, what are you doing? Like, these are kids. Would you want to do what they're doing? You like it at your age, but you're in a different place than them. And, it's a different setting. There's so many different things going on with them than with you. It can't be just what you like. And once I realized that, things changed. I started to be more myself in there and not, worry about being like, again, I'll still be a professional, but, I have a very relaxed relationship with the kids. Again, I speak to them as equals, not as I'm up here, you're down here. And I think they appreciate that. Side note, there was a kid I worked, so he's in my class now, and I worked with him last year as well. So he took my course again. And initially, he didn't like me, and we didn't get along. And at the end of the year, he wrote a message. One of their final pieces is they write this reflection and what have you. So anyway, so one of the things he writes is, when I first came into this class. I didn't like you because you hated all the hockey kids, which I didn't. Um, and he goes like, I thought you were a dick. And he wrote this in a paper. And so I'm reading this. It's like, oh, this is great. And he goes, but he goes, once I got to know you, and once we got to, have conversations, et cetera, you're a good guy, and what have you. So again, I feel like I can talk to the kids and not be talking down to them. And I feel they get that a lot in the high school setting from a lot of teachers, a lot of adults. And so I think listening to them really helped me develop as a coach. And just like I said, seeing it from their eyes instead of just my own eyes.
Well, the one of the things you said is like it's a them problem. You hear that so much in strength conditioning. Like kids nowadays are so lazy. Kids are like, go watch those kids play a video game, bro. Like this is such a big epiphany moment for me. I'm like, those kids will spend 15 hours a day grinding the most monotonous things ever in a video game because
Yep.
it works on their dopamine system and it makes it enjoyable. But like they're putting 15 hours of work into something, right?
Yep.
So they are capable of work. They're capable
Absolutely.
of working really, really hard for something. Now, that something is probably not super productive in video games, right?
Nope.
Like we understand that. We can agree on that part of it. But to say the kid is lazy, to say they're unable, like no, like it's your session, I'm seeing data points right here in front of me that they are capable of ridiculous amounts of work and ridiculous amounts of focus. You just have to unlock that within them.
Definitely.
And once you do, man, it's crazy. You get that kid to treat training like a video game, and you'll get 2 hours of insane levels of focus. And I don't I really have yet to meet an athlete where it's impossible to get that out of them. Some athletes it's a pain in the ass for sure, but people are capable of that. It's not that it's not that they're not able. It's that they don't want to because
Right.
you don't make it for the most part enjoyable.
That's it. That's the main thing. And like I said, that piece there, making it enjoyable for them. And again, just swallowing your own ego and being like, you know what, maybe what I'm doing is shit. Maybe what I'm giving them sucks. Maybe that's why no one's participating, right? And again, it's easy to point the finger at the kid, but the kids are the same. Like, people say, the kids are different, and they maybe, but what's different is the tools in their hands and their environment around them. But the kid is still the kid. You know what I mean? When they come in the weight room, they really have they're not using their phones. Like they're all kind of away. There's just no real opportunity to do it. And what I've observed is they're kids, and I see myself in those kids, and the fun that they're having. Like, yeah, that would be me. I would be doing that. What those guys are doing, and it's infectious. Like you listen to it, and that makes you want to make those sessions good. So that's why, like I said, the main theme that I want when you come in there is that you're going to have a fun time, and you're going to get something out of it, and you're going to work hard, and get stronger and all those things and faster and what have you, but you're going to enjoy it. And that piece there was a huge change for me. Just to, like I said, if your kids are not participating in your sessions probably suck, bottom line. And I had someone ask me even yesterday. They said, "Do you work out during your class, and like do your own training?" And I said, and I kind of looked at them, kind of puzzled. I said, "No," I said, "but I do know teachers that do that, and not at my school, but I know of some PE teachers that will work out during their class. So, and their excuse is, well, the kids don't want to do anything." I was like, all right, well, maybe what you're giving them sucks. Give them something they want to do, and do it with them, and don't just work out on your own and write something on the board for the kids to do and get pissed off that they're not doing it because like I said, maybe it's not very good. And as I said before, the kids will be the first ones to tell you this is great, this sucks. Again, you see it on their faces, and that's sort of how I push those games onto those kids, and just watching them, seeing how they react.
Well, and the thing there too that I really like to emphasize over and over again is like a lot of coaches can listen to this and it's like, well, it's like the liberal strength coach way of thinking, the happy-go-lucky, like it's all just fun and play, but we're a business. We're here to like get these athletes better. It's like, yeah, dummy. Like again, I'm getting 2 hours of super solid output out of these athletes now because they enjoy it, and it's way less work to get that output out of the athlete. Like we have a couple athletes that they're notorious that if we have a good jump variation that day, and I'm not overemphasizing, they will legitimately jump for 45 to 50 minutes. Like and PRing 45 to 50 minutes into their jump sessions, right? Like you're getting a ridiculous amount of stimulus done by just taking one rein of the horse off and just being like,
Yes.
okay, like let's just meet them where they're at. And that's just one of my biggest pet peeves with the field. It's like they look at it like they'll look at your page, they'll look at my page, it's like it's just goofing around, or like my favorite is like they're like, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, like it's fun, but again, we're the professionals, we're the business side of this, like we're trying to. It's like, bro, I promise you, you can get insane, amazing stimulus-based results out of this. It's just not starting with that. It's not starting with pulling the teeth, right? It's starting with brushing the teeth and making brushing the teeth enjoyable.
Yeah. The another one of the commentaries I got from the session I ran yesterday was, "Oh, this would be a good team building session." I was like, "Okay, it'll be a good team building session," but again, it's almost like they saw no value in what we're doing. Again, they look at it and be like, "Okay, it's not. They're not in lines. They're not doing, you know, these properly crafted drills and strength work, etc." But the every parent started their commentary with, "My kid loved it. My kid loved it. My kid was smiling. My kid's still talking about yesterday's session." But then it's, "Well, I don't know how it relates to hockey," and like that. And then the parent commentary comes in, right? It's
Yeah.
like, I'm like, oh boy. So it's I'm like, but your kid loves it, right? And at the end of the day, it's that's what you want. You want your child to enjoy what they're doing. They're gonna, as you said, they're gonna take the bull by the horn there and run with that session and enjoy themselves in it. You mentioned the jumping. I did the same thing the other day. We were doing hurdle jumps, and the kids just wanted to keep edging it up, edging it up, edging it up. So let's see how high we can go. And that lasted for 45 minutes. I had it planned for 10 or 15, and here we are, and they just kept doing it. So yeah, and as you said, you can the stimulus that you can get from just doing something simple like that, and let the kids kind of take over and dictate kind of the session, because they're still trying to push themselves to improve, right? They're still trying to get that jump or whatever it is that they're trying to do. You know what I mean? So that stimulus is still there. And again, I can't create that with a simple 3x5 box jump or something like that. And here again, like they're just, and they'll just keep doing it and doing it. And finally they'll be like, my legs are getting sore, right? And then they know it's time to stop. I'm like, okay, we'll move on from now, right?
Yeah.
Or they get the jump and then it's time to move on, right? Then those are the two indicators for sure.
And it's one of the only reasons that I keep metrics, and I'm big into, and this is like, it's funny for me that people view the training that we do and view me the way that they do. And because I talk about this stuff a lot, but like, if I like, and I've got caught in this trap, and I continually get caught in the metric trap game, is like, I still do metrics. Like we still do jump mats, we still do flying tens, we still track our strength stuff. Like we still do all of it.
Mhm.
And I find myself like I'm very type A. Like my program, if I get lost in this stuff, would strictly be everything just to drive these three numbers, just because my brain works. It's like a winning mentality. It's something to climb and something to do. I really actively have to pull myself out of those settings. But I still take these metrics. And the best thing is like I basically just take these metrics to tell people to buzz off when they do say stuff like team build. It's a team building. No, it's like all of our vertical and strength and speed numbers have increased. Like buzz off, like I got data in front of you to kind of show you these aspects too. And I get, so we're talking about meeting the kids where they're at. I get part of it's meeting the parents or the coaches or where they're at, but it's just super unfortunate that you have to do that, because it's like, it's not about you, man. It's not about the administrator at the college. It's not about this coach at the college or the parents in the situation. It should be just about that kid, and you don't have to worry about that. But again, that's pretty much the only reason I take these metrics. Is it's not even for the kid or for me anymore. It's just for all the other noise that you have, and then you're just able to like silence it.
Yes, that's one thing I don't do well is the metrics piece. I mean, we do test it I test them with the kids at school because they want to know some of their numbers and they like to compete with each other and so on. When I move into a setting like yesterday, especially because of the age, my thought is, you know, they're going to get better. No matter what we do, they're going to improve. So, but I see your point in terms of, having that piece to show the parent, be like, hey, your kid can only do one chin up last time. Now they can do three. They're running this much faster. They're jumping this much further. They can hang on the goalpost longer. Whatever it is might be some metric that they can be like, oh, maybe this stuff is working or whatever.
Well, that's my favorite thing. You said like they're going to get better no matter what you do. That is my favorite thing about private sector strength conditioning in the high school sector, bro. It's like they're like fresh. Look at these freshman numbers, the
Yeah.
senior numbers. Like you mean puberty, bro? Like the dude grew 6 inches and
Right.
gained 50 pounds of
Yeah,
body weight. Like what are we talking? It's legit insanity that like we put those numbers there. Like look at our high school combine numbers and the improvements on them. It's like, bro, we could have thrown them to a recess with no coach, and they have those hormones pumping through them, and it's gonna be the same exact thing.
absolutely. Right. I had a kid ask me yesterday, he's like, Coach, what kind of split do you do? I'm like, I go, okay, I'm 45, you're 17, our splits are different. And I said, in the end, I go, what do you do? He goes, well, I do like back, and I'm like, okay, so you do like bodybuilder style. I go, everything works. I go, just work hard, lift heavy weights, and go run and jump. Everything works. And I go, you're young, so just go try many different things and see what you like. Bottom line, you might like this now, but you might not like it in next year. So try another method, right? Don't just stick to one thing. Try different methods and see what fits for you. But yeah, everything generally will work with this demographic. It's the high school sector gets a little bit overblown with their ego because of kids are following something and look at these improvements, and that's all well and good. But again, as you said, they could follow a piece of garbage, and as long as they adhere to that program, they'll see improvements.
Yeah, yeah. I probably followed some of the worst programs
Same,
known to mankind when I was in high school, and I gained 100 pounds in every single
right?
lift. I'm like, bro,
They
it's
all
just because I
work,
was training like a total psychopath.
right?
Um, one of the things that you talked about was how a lot of your athletes have this secondary strength session, right? Like either they're in the private sector or a different class, whatever it is. Would your sessions change, or how would they change if? Because I really appreciate that you're able to be like, all right, they're already getting that. Because a lot of coaches, this is what they would do. They would already get it, but they'd be like, oh, my program's better. Fuck it. Like, we're just going to do whatever I do. Like I know a lot of coaches like that.
I do think that though.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
I
But
don't tell them that.
if you did have full control over like where they weren't doing extra stuff and you just had everything, like you were just their strength conditioning, like that's all they had. Would your sessions change? Would you added more accessory? Like what would that kind of look like? How would your kind of program look like if you were solely in charge of what they were doing?
Yeah, so I would definitely add a little bit more with respect to the weights, but as I said, so many of these kids are coming in and they're getting exposure to the weight room from their sport coach. And again, it could be good, it could be bad. I usually ask the kids right away, you know, who's on a program? Can I see it? And I just want to kind of see what they're doing so I'm not, crushing these kids with volume. And some of them, like I said, are very good, and some of them are, most are not. A lot of volume, like I said, some of the lifts, like some of the baseball kids, I've mentioned that their programs were generally pretty good, a little more well-rounded with the yoga and what have you. But the length of some of the programs that they're doing are just insane. Like, they're training for 2 hours and they got like an hour and a half, 2 hour lift after training. I'm just like, oh my God, like it's so much. And then you come to school the next day and then you're with me in the weight room again and it's a lot. So if I had full control, I would still maintain, the rival stuff. What I would do is I would just shorten some of the games that we do. As that's a huge part of the experience that the kids have in there. But I would just add a few more lifts. Nothing crazy. I don't think I would change it too much. I do like the template that I'm running now with the kids because it's manageable for them. Again, high school setting, they're not paying me to be there, so it's a different, like they're not there for that 1 hour. They have to get it all done and then out. There's that social piece where, you'll do a lift or do whatever it might be, and then, you have a few minutes to chit chat, and which is fine. Like again, I kind of want them to, I kind of build in their rest that way for certain things. But again, sometimes they're chatting a little bit longer, whatever. So time kind of flies in there. It really is fleeting in that space. I said I have 75 minutes, but the first 10 minutes, I wait for the kids to kind of get there, and that's when they're doing that arrival stuff. I'm waiting for kids to get changed. They got to leave their other class, blah, blah, blah. And then the last 5 to 8 minutes I cut because we got to clean up the room. The kids got to go get changed for their next class or whatever. So I already lose almost 20 minutes right there. So now I'm down to about 50, 55 minutes for a session, which is still great. That's still plenty of time. And again, like I said, what I would do if I was solely their coach in the weight room, and some of those kids I am their only coach in the weight room, and so I give them something different. They'll come and see me, and they'll ask for something, and I'll give them something a little more weight focused. What I've noticed this year, so I mentioned again the type of athletes that's at the school, and how many kids are moving on to next level, D1 or D2 or D3 or wherever they're going. And so these kids are getting programs from their schools.
Hmm.
So now they're coming to me, and they're showing me the program, and I'm looking at some of the programs, and the first thing that I notice is how vastly different they are. It is amazing, and I'm talking within the same sport. Like I have a group of my soccer kids that are coming in to train at lunch with me, and they have all different programs. One is from Marshall. I shouldn't even say the schools, but anyway, one is from Marshall, one is from Binghamton, one is from St. John's, and they're all different, completely different. One of them, the best one is the one from Marshall. I have to say, if whoever the strength coach is for that soccer team, that one is the best. It's the most thorough and most complete. The one from St. John's is all running. Again, I understand that that's what they want their players to be able to do, and that's what they want from their players. But you look at the weight room stuff, there is minimal emphasis on being strong or sprinting, plyos, completely absent from the program. The other young lady from Binghamton, their program is very heavily weight room based. Almost no, actually, I should say no plyos, no speed work. But again, at the same time, I have to take these with a grain of salt because, you're handing it over to a 17-year-old, and with no, you don't know who the strength coach is on the other side, and you're just expecting the kid to do this. So I don't know if it's the same thing that they're giving their team, or is this something unique that you're getting as a grade 12 kid going there next year. But yeah, so that piece there, the differences are unbelievable. I was really shocked to see how different they were. So what I'm helping these kids do now is learn those movements. Like some of them, may not have learned to clean, and so okay, I'll teach you a clean, so that way when you go to school, you can do it, and you don't have to. The coach doesn't have to waste time trying to spend weeks and weeks and weeks trying to get your clean number up, so that way you can get on the field. So anyway, that's what I'm doing now with those kids, and but yeah, some of the variety of the programs is unreal, right? Which I guess it's expected, but I just didn't think it was going to be that much of a discrepancy between schools, right? As I said, one of them is very heavy on the aerobic side, and again, where the other one is not at all. So that part is interesting too.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I love and you do a good job of giving nuance there too, because it's like you see some of these high school programs that they get, and you're like, all right, is this actually what you guys believe, or is it because you're handing it to a kid you have no idea, or is it because your head coach gave you a 1 day? I've been in situations where head coaches told me, all right, the high schoolers need their program tomorrow, and I'm like, bro, what? They need a whole summer longs in season
right?
program like tomorrow. Like, what are we talking about? Why are we not talking about this program? Like, what are we doing? And then you have no idea who the coach is or what's going on. But yeah, those are always my favorite. You're just shipping off programs to kids you've never met before. That's the other thing. The coach usually has never met the athlete, or if they
Right.
have, it's like a recruiting visit type meeting, and it's like kind of all over the place. So yeah, the craziness there. One of the things I want to ask you before we log off is you're kind of 3 years deep into a lot of the movement stuff that you're doing and building it up. And the epiphany moment of getting into like the red pill, seeing movement for movement, seeing stimulus is one part of it. And now there's like layers to it. What has been kind of maybe your recent rabbit hole or recent like epiphanies you've been having? Is there anything that you're kind of geeking out on right now?
Well, I just started implementing some loaded stretches, and so I mean, I can't remember who posted that a while ago. Anyway, somebody was talking about it. Sometimes again, like with that algorithm, you listen to one thing a little bit, and then all of a sudden it's just showing you that all the time. So it just seemed like everybody was doing loaded stretches. I'm like, why am I not doing loaded stretches? So I started reading more about that, and I was Christian Thibodeau had a nice article, and I stole the template there and tried it yesterday with the kids. So I was looking for feedback today, and they loved it, and again, just you know. Really straining yesterday during the session and whatever. So in terms of what else I'm trying to learn in that regard, I used to go through Instagram and save a bunch of posts, right, of different ideas, and in large part it was those games that I was interested in, and but I feel now like I have a pretty good arsenal of games and like warm up activities and fun stuff for my demographic to do, and now, so where have I moved on from there? To be honest, it's been more communication pieces. Relaying my message to the kids. How do I make sure that they understand what I'm asking of them? Just being open to more ideas, a better listener. Those pieces there have helped me be a better coach, I think, in terms of listening to the athlete. Not really so much in terms of strength and conditioning. I know that's, doesn't really fit. The last book I read with respect to that was the Dr. Tommy John book. And I know you've mentioned that book before, and somebody else just mentioned it a couple months ago, so I picked it up and was just reading through that. And it was a lot of things that, I was kind of doing already, and just kind of was things I was already in agreement with. And but again, still some pieces in there that I've picked and used in my programming as well. But yeah, outside of that, I mean, to be honest, it's been more sport things. So I coach both my daughters, their soccer teams, 14 and 11-year-old, or excuse me, 10-year-old, and will be 11 soon. So those teams there. So I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out better ways to teach both of those demographics. So that's where my interest is gone. Again, I mentioned the age difference, and what I do with the 14-year-old, I cannot do with the 10-year-old. Again, even I'll try things with that demographic, the 10-year-old demographic, and I'm like, no, this isn't working right away. Like I can see it the first 5 seconds. I'm like, this sucks, got to stop. The kids are looking at me, and I'm like, okay, no, no, no. So I'm trying to learn more about how to implement things like footwork, right? So again, it's a soccer team, and touch is everything with respect to being able to feel the ball and so on. So how to find interesting ways for those kids to do those drills. I'm saying drill in air quotes here because again, I always treat it like a game for them. If they hear it's a drill and there's lines, it's going to be nonsense. And trying to find ways to get them maximally engaged and wanting them to enjoy that time and to want to get better. So that's really where I've kind of been trying to learn from. And one, I mentioned the gentleman I work with, his name's Anto, and he's the head coach of our soccer team, and just a great mind with respect to soccer. So I'm really trying to pick his brain and watch what he's doing in those technical and tactical sessions when I'm done my physical part, and seeing how he's running it with those high school kids and how they're buying into that, and how they're flourishing in that environment. So I'm trying to take some of those ideas, use them with my two teams there, and kind of see how that plays out. And but that's pretty much what I'm looking at now. Is I'm trying to just focus more on a sport, and just looking at parallels with physical development and how that might help them as a soccer player. There was that, again, I mentioned that hockey team I worked with yesterday. On the soccer field beside me was a few players from the U11 team. So they were there doing some technical work. So I was chit-chatting with the parents there, and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I'm just running like a PE session over here." So anyways, we got to talking about just how that playing that single sport all year, we kind of miss out on some of the development of those physical qualities for the kids. And I'm just trying to, tie those loose ends for these kids here with some PE type stuff. And and right away they, I said I'm going to start doing that at the first. I have been doing it sparingly with that team, but I mentioned I was going to do that more so. So now, like I said, just trying to find that balance, or that relationship, or that handshake, if you will, between some of those movements and soccer itself. But soccer is such a technical sport, and sometimes it's hard to find pieces that mesh well. But ultimately, that's what I'm looking at, is how to get them be a better skilled soccer player, and at the same time still be able to do some of the cool stuff that they can do physically with backflips and cartwheels and so on.
Well, it seems to be the Michael's way full circle of a strength coach, where you start with the sport, you go all the way into the weight room, you become the movement guy, you go back all the way to the sport, and you kind of get that circle, and you figure out, okay, how do we tie all of this together? So that's pretty sweet to hear that. But Coach, I want to say thank you for coming on. Thank you for putting up with our technical difficulties and re-explaining things a couple times. This seemed pretty flawless. You're high quality right now. We never had any breaks or no legs. So appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Well, thanks for having me, Austin. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for listening. Keep chopping wood.